Hello and welcome. I'm so happy you have chosen to spend some time with me today. So, as we're nearing Christmas and I'm setting up my decorations and the nativity and everything, it kind of hit me. So, why shepherds? And so I thought I would look at that a little bit today. Why were shepherds among the first ones to have been told about the birth of Christ, as well as to go and see the newborn infant? We look at influencers and people whom others choose to emulate or follow. It doesn't seem like shepherds would be at the top of that list. The wise men? Yeah, that makes sense. Visual aid. It's one of the wise men from my nativity. They were well educated. They were scientists, very well versed in the science of astronomy, and elites, both political and in terms of being influencers of their countries and regions. They were those whom many others would feel compelled to acknowledge and follow, whether through their authority or their status. They visited the child, then that child must have been important. But the shepherds, maybe not so much. Shepherds throughout history have been very isolated from others. They tend their flocks. There's a shepherd carrying one of his flock. And here's a little ram. I won't have a lot of visual aids, but these are part of my nativity. They tend their flocks, which means they have to keep their sheep safe from predators and often put their own selves in harm's way to do so. I just read a book, A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23, in which the author had been a shepherd and explains the care that a modern shepherd has to give to the flock as well as to the dangers that are faced. The author, Philip Keller, examines what each verse means in Psalm 23 in terms of the caring for sheep and for caring for other people. Psalm 23 in the Old Testament demonstrates how a shepherd cares for the flock. Sheep need a great deal of care. If left unattended, sheep will eat grass and vegetation to the roots, often preventing future growth of feet. They will drink water that has been polluted and full of disease. They get skin irritations, and there are flies that will actually lay eggs in a sheep's nostrils. A cast sheep may lay down, and to the gases building up internally may not be able to get up again. Sheep do not have natural defenses against predators or the many diseases they face. Therefore, the shepherd has to take great care to ensure the health and safety of the flock. Many biblical figures in the Old Testament were shepherds and herders, while while there remains controversy over whether or not shepherds at the time of the birth of Christ were ostracized from society, they did face many dangers while in the fields with their flocks. They often led very isolated lives, and they continually had to deal with their own injuries as well as the smell and state of their clothing and bodies. Shepherds may have been viewed as unclean by some, but they did provide an essential service in raising sheep for both food and sacrifice. And they were among the few to whom the birth of Christ was announced, and among the few to visit the infant. So this takes me back to my original question and thought. Why shepherds? Throughout both the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, there are a plethora of references to shepherds, sheep, and the Good Shepherd. Yes, the references are metaphors in that how a shepherd cares for the flock is how God cares for us. Like sheep, sometimes we follow the rest of the flock instead of acting individually, and this is not always in our best interests. The many scriptural references reinforce the concept of how a loving God cares for his people, even when we get ourselves into unsafe and unwise situations. However, I also think there is another aspect to the inclusion of shepherds in the nativity events. Even though we may seek after and follow influencers, the wealthy, and the elites of our society, we may also sometimes see ourselves as less than these elites. I read and hear about many events and fundraisers I would be really interested in attending, but could never afford. I watch House Hunters and House Hunters International, but no, I could never afford some of the amazing homes they feature. All around us are advertisements, shows, movies, etc., in which fantasy, luxurious lifestyles are glamorized. And yet I know that, barring winning a $1 billion lottery, I will never be able to afford those things. Therefore, in considering the Nativity, do I most relate to the wise men who learned of Christ's birth and are included in the Nativity story? Or do I most relate to the shepherds? Maybe, just maybe, there was the diversity of persons who were informed of the birth and who ventured to see Jesus in order to show the inclusivity of the birth of Jesus. And then, when I look at the persons to whom Jesus ministered during his life, I see the same inclusivity. Those who were rejected by society were loved by Jesus as he interacted with lepers, beggars, prostitutes, etc., along with those with other occupations. However, there were also persons of great wealth and influence with whom Jesus interacted and ministered, such as lawyers, physicians, and religious leaders. So God's love and word do not just extend to a few, but extends to all. Unlike our current society, which seems to place a greater value on some people over others, God places a high value on all of us, to the point that he sent his Son to redeem us. In an era in which a great emphasis is placed on being inclusive, God demonstrated comprehensive inclusivity not only at the birth of Christ, but throughout the entire life, ministry, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. As Christmas approaches and we celebrate the birth of Christ and spend time with our friends and family, I want to encourage us to think about to whom God sent word about the birth of Christ, to the lowly and to those at the pinnacle of knowledge and power, to those who lived at Bethlehem or near Bethlehem, as well as to those who had to travel great distances to get to see the child. In other words, to all of us. We are all included in the good news of the birth. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope we are all looking forward to this season, to the season of joy and being with those whom we love, as well as remembering the purpose and foundation of the celebration of Christmas. Thank you.